So hey everyone, welcome to Small Farm Living. Today, let's just get right into some crafting. So for craft number one, we are going to take this tin can. Now this is not your standard soup size can. This is the larger, probably family size. And I have this burlap that has a peel and stick back, so it is tacky, and of course it won't come off while I was trying to show you. It's perfectly in between the top rim and the bottom rim of this can. So I'm just gonna roll it, grab my thumb where I need to cut, and I'm going to cut a little bit longer than I need just to be safe. Use my icky scissors because there is a little bit of tackiness to this product. And I'm going to just remove a little bit of the backing at a time and leave the rest intact as I start the project. That way I'm not fighting with it trying to stick to places on my project I don't want it to stick to before I get to that point. So I'm just going to secure it on. And this is actually very maneuverable. You can stretch it from side to side and top to bottom. Not a lot, but just enough to get it to fit where you want it to go. And as I get the first little section secured, I'll just pull off a little bit more and keep working my way around the can. Now, as I get to the end, I'm going to leave the backing paper on there so that I can cut that off without getting my scissors super sticky. And then once I have it cut, then I'll just go ahead and pull the rest of that backing off and then work the product all the way up to the starting seam so that I have a good tight fit. And again, I don't know if you can see how maneuverable it is as I'm working it on there. But now that I have that done, I am going to add a strip of this really fun ribbon right around the center. So I'm just going to measure how much I need with a little bit of an overhang. And again, using my not best scissors because this is wired ribbon, I'll just put a little strip of glue on the seam at the back, tack that into place, and then I will just grab the other side, pull it up, and then put kind of a wide swath on there because this is going to overlap just a little bit, just so that you don't see any rough cut edges, and line up my stripes there. Now I have these stars and I'm going to put a little bit of antique Waverly wax on them just to darken them up a little bit to kind of fit with the burlap on here. They don't sit perfectly flat, but they do enough to where I'm going to use these on this project. I'm just going to space them out around the can, add a good amount of hot glue onto them, and get those tacked into place. And now I'm going to work on the top and the bottom rim. Now I'm just going to take some of my jute twine, measure it, cut two strips together, tack the two top pieces together with some hot glue. Again, I do not have my silicone fingers. I don't even know if I ever can do a video now with my silicone fingers. It's kind of become the joke of my videos that I never remember to grab them before I start my project. So I'm just going to trim off the end so it's nice and clean. Start at the back where my seam was, put a little bit of hot glue on there. And as soon as I get that tacked into place, and I want it to be nice and dried and secure before I start the next process, because I do need to put a little pressure on it. And what I'm going to be doing is just twisting the two pieces together just to give it a more fuller decorative look at the top and bottom. Now you can buy some braided jute, and that is in my Amazon shop if you're interested. I just don't have any on hand at the moment, and I actually like the way the two pieces twisted together look. So I'm just doing little sections at a time because I find that if I try to do too long of a twist, by the time I get to where I'm going, it's kind of separated a little bit and doesn't look the best. So I did the top and the bottom. And the can is actually done, and we are going to put a little something inside of here, and we're going to make that next. Now here are 3 tubes. You can see I have 2 that are the same size, 1 that isn't, but I want staggering heights. So what I'm going to do is take my pencil and I am going to mark where I want the height to start on my first one. It's a little bit longer than I want, so I made that mark on the first one, and then where the top of the first one ends will be where my second one is. And then I will take the line from the top of my first one, match it up with the second one, and that will give me the equal distance that I need to the third line, so they all kind of have the same height difference on each 3. Now these were really thick tubes. You can see they kind of mashed a little bit when I cut them. I'm going to use those at the bottom. They came from some of my husband's painting supplies, and the smallest one was from my vacuum seal bags. But I'm going to use this same burlap, cut a piece to size, And we are going to wrap this. And I'm going to do the same thing that I did with the tin can. I'm just going to pull a little bit off at a time so that I can ensure that all that is sticking is the pieces that I am currently working with. And I'm just going to do the same thing. I'm just going to start rolling it on and we're done. So now here is some kind of like flag ribbon, and I want this to go at a diagonal. So I'm going to put a little strip of glue at the top there, start at the seam on the back, tape it on or glue it on at the diagonal starting out. And then I'm just going to wrap it. And then when I get to about the center mark, I do like to put a little bit, a dab of hot glue on there. And again, I'm going to do it at the seam on the back just so that it keeps my spacing in place and I don't lose that as I continue on down the tube. And then when I get to the bottom, I'm going to cut the bottom at a slight angle. And then I'm going to get some glue on that and put it in place. And because it's at an angle, there will be a little bit that sticks over at the bottom. And all I'm going to do is just tuck that down and inside the tube because that's going to be the bottom and you won't see it. Now the white on the stripes of this is pretty much bright white. So I'm going to take some of my antique Waverly wax, going to dab off the excess on a paper towel so it's more on the drier side. And I'm just going to brush it all over this ribbon to try to distress it and make it a little more antiqued looking. So again, it matches more in with the burlap that's on the tube. And that is all we're going to do for tube number 1. Now for the second tube, I found these napkins at Home Goods the other day, and I really like them because they are kind of, I don't know, they kind of remind me of vintage Patriotic, like the old style flag a little bit. I don't know why. But these are just 2-ply napkins, so I'm going to open it up and you'll see what the whole design looks like. And this tube, this is the medium-sized tube, and it didn't quite fit the design, so I measured up the small one and it fit perfect. So I'm going to just do something different with the second tube and do this one for the smallest one. So I'm going to take the 2 plies apart. I used a little bit of tape because this did not want to come apart on its own. And we are just going to gently separate those so that we have just our nice thin top layer of our napkin. Now I'm going to put this on with a glue stick. You could use Mod Podge if you want. I just find these cheap little glue sticks from the Dollar Tree work just fine. And I am going to take and just start applying the glue in a straight line from top to bottom, back and forth, so I have full coverage. And I do, I don't know, about a third at a time, and then start putting the paper on. Now I'm just going to line it up and gently smooth it onto the whole area that has the glue on it. And once I get to the end of that, I'll just lift the napkin up and I'll just repeat the process with the glue until I get all the way to the starting point. And when I get back to the starting point, I am going to put a little bit of the glue on the actual napkin piece that was the start so that I can overlap and get it all sealed into place. And get it all smoothed out, no wrinkles. And that's where I'm going to put the final layer of glue. And now I'm just using my hands to make sure that it's all good and secure on there. Now on this tube, I decided that the stripes were a little too much on one side and I wanted to add a little bit of stars. So I just put a little bit of glue on there after I cut out my strip of stars. I added that on there. I smoothed it all down and you would have never known. And I'm just going to tuck the little ends into the bottom. You could use this as the top if you want. The other side is a little bit rougher, but we're going to put some things in here and you won't see that anyway. So now we are done with this tube. Let's move on to our third one. Now I'm going to take this same ribbon again and I'm going to wrap it around and I'm going to measure just how much I need with a little bit of overlap. I'm going to cut it off with my not best scissors because again this is wired ribbon and I don't like cutting through wire with my good sewing scissors. And I'm going to measure how many more pieces I need to cut in that length to fill up my tube. Going to put a little strip of hot glue on there and just start gluing the strips on from top to bottom. Now on this one I remembered to get the red at the top on the can. I was a little bit frustrated because when I had it all glued on I realized I had the ribbon upside down and so it kind of went blue, white, red, but you know what, overall it's not something that you even really notice anyway, unless you are OCD about that kind of stuff. I am about some things, but not so much about that. So I'm just going to get a little bit more glue put on there. I'm going to wrap it around, making sure that the stripe lines match. Now that I have all three done, I just wanted to tie them together with a piece of jute. At first it was just going to be a single piece, and I didn't really like the way that was looking. It was kind of just too small for the size of the tubes. So I cut a much longer piece and I proceeded to wind it around 3 times. And then I'm just working on getting the pieces of twine all secured together so it looks more like a solid bunch with no gaps in the middle. And once I have that in place, I'm just going to pull up the string. I'm going to cut off the excess that's attached to the roll, give it a tied little bow, and those are done. They're going to go inside this can. I'm going to stuff some of my used napkin, or the backs of the napkins, in there to hold it in place. And this is what it looked like. I added these little sprigs at the top and then a little bit of fabric around the tubes in the center. But I got those little sparkly sprigs at Hobby Lobby on clearance at Christmas time, 90% off, because they had a bunch of red, white, and blue stuff for Christmas. It was kind of crazy, but it worked out good for me for the 4th of July. So the last project that we're going to do, I found this harvest sign. It is from the Dollar Tree. I honestly don't remember if I picked it up from the Dollar Tree or not, but I thought it was funny that it had the exact same sign underneath, but they, for some reason, put in like a 3D elevated one on the top of it. But I'm going to take all the paper off of here, and I was so hoping, you guys, that this was just going to be one of those ones that came off perfect and I didn't have to hardly do any work. And as my luck would always have it, this one was a stinker, and I sprayed it and sprayed it and sprayed it to get it to come off. And I'm not going to show you the whole long process because it was pretty tedious, but I did get it all off. Now, these napkins I got at the Dollar General last year on clearance after the 4th of July. I've had them in my stash. I was just going to use them for summer barbecue, but I thought these are so cute. I'm just going to craft with some of these. So I'm going to open it up, and we are going to remove the 2 layers so that we just have the top thin layer. And now the main portion that we are going to use, of course, is going to be the red truck. I took this outside, spray painted it white so that it had a nice solid white surface on the back. And here it is. Now I'm going to take some Mod Podge and I'm going to give an even coat over there, take my blow dryer, blow it dry. And now that we are at that point, off camera, before I spray painted it white, I did tape the edges with some painter's tape because this fall decor, believe it or not, had a blue trim all around the edge, and I thought it was the perfect color of blue for Patriotic decor. So in order to keep that intact and not lose it, I just used some painter's tape, so I'll work on getting the rest of that off. And I'm going to use my paintbrush with a little bit of water to outline the design of the truck, just to give it a rougher edge instead of a straight cleaned edge that you'll see, or you don't really see it so much. I guess you see it more if you do a straight cut edge when you Mod Podge it on. And now I'm not left-handed. I just flipped the view of the footage when I was editing so that you could see it more in a straight on fashion. And I use an eraser to take little fine details off. Now you'll see the edges are hanging over on this, and that's completely fine for me because I'm just going to take my little finger sander here and I'm going to take those edges off so it will be perfect. And I'm just trying to decide where I wanted to put this, and because I want the truck to look like it's driving down a road. So I scooted it down to the bottom and I grabbed my iron. I don't know why I always grab it first instead of my parchment paper, but you need to have your parchment paper first. Lay that down so then I can grab my iron and set that on top and start to very gently work it around. Go over it multiple amounts of times just because it takes a little bit for that heat to penetrate, and I don't like it to sit in one spot for too long. Now down in the description below there will be a link to my Amazon store, so any of the products that I use, you can find them there. And if you purchase one of those or anything else when you go in through that link, my channel does get a little bit of credit for that, and I appreciate it so much. And thank you to those of you who have already been doing that. It really makes a difference for my channel. So now that we have got this pretty much all warmed up and secured on here, we are going to pull the parchment paper off, and you will see that my cute little truck design is secured on there. So now let's get these little edges off. Now on this finger sander, I do have a really heavy grit of sandpaper on here that I still had on from another project. So I just used very finger-light touches when I sanded this off. And because the napkin is so thin, it comes off really easy. And I just didn't want to push too hard and take off any of that blue edging on the sides, because I love the color so much, and it just goes right along with the product. And you can see it just gives a nice clean edged finish, and it looks pretty. Now, as I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, you know, the top of this is a little plain. So I thought, you know what, I'm gonna just take a few of those stars out and I'm gonna add them up onto the top here, just in a random pattern, and then maybe one up here at the very top so that it doesn't look so plain and white. So now I have those all on here. I'm just going to do the same thing, put my parchment paper on and my iron, and here is where I'm going to admit to you that I was pushing this project way too hard, and my paint had not cured the best that it should have before I put the Mod Podge on. And so after reactivating it, for some reason up at the top, it must have been where it was still a little on the damp side, and it was pulling some of the paint off, unfortunately. So I had to come up with plan B. Now right there where it took off that biggest glob, I'm going to put kind of like a shaggy bow up there, so that will be covered. But I went ahead and just touched up the rough spots with some white just to make them disappear as much as I could. Then I took some of my white and dark blue paint and I created a sky color, and I just rubbed that on so that it looked, you know, a little bit more finished up at the top, and it actually did hide all of the other rough spots from the darn paint peeling. So I'm going to take this same ribbon, and this time I'm going to cut off a piece, and I am going to actually remove the wires from this because I don't need the wires for this part of the project. So all I'm going to do is take the end and pull it down a little bit. It'll expose the wire. You can either pull it out with needle nose pliers or with your fingers if you can get a hold of it. And I'm going to do that to both sides. Now that the wire is out, I'm going to take my good sewing scissors and I'm going to cut out the strip of blue, the strip of creamy color, and the red, so that I have 3 separate stripes. I'm going to cut those in half again because those are a little too large. Then I'm going to cut out 2 strips of my flag ribbon. And I should have put my piece of jute twine at the bottom like I normally do, but I am in full-blown garden mode, as those of you who watch me know, and my mind is going 100 different miles an hour on so many different things, and I just forgot. So, I mean, I can work with it, but it just makes it easier when I already have it laid down at the bottom. So I was carefully lifting it all up, getting my jute twine put in there, and I gave it a good solid knot twist on the top. And then after I got that one done, I flipped the bow over and I did a knot on the back side. And then I wanted to size this up, and it was a little too long. So I decided I didn't really want to do super fancy edges on all these. So in order to take off some of the length and give it a little bit of a decorative finish at the end, I just did slant cuts. And now that that is done, I'm going to take these extra pieces of jute twine, and in the center on the front, I'm going to put a strip of glue across one side and the other side, and I'm going to wrap those around the front knot so it just gives a little more of a wide look of the jute on the front. And then on the back side, I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut off the excess. And then I realized I didn't cut off enough, so I'm going to cut off a little bit more. And then I'm just going to take my hot glue gun and I'm going to tack those ends down onto the back. And then I'm going to take my hot glue gun and I'm going to put a nice big old glob of glue on the back, and I'm going to put that right down at the very top where the handle meets, and that's pretty much right where that big old chunk came off, and it hides it perfectly. And then I'm just fixing my ribbon a little bit, and I decided it needed one more thing. So I grabbed a package of my red, white, and blue star confetti, and of course they always want to stick together, and I was just trying to get a white one out, and finally I got them separated, and I'm just going to take that little white star and glue it right in the center of my ribbon. So I'll just put a little blob of hot glue on there and get that tucked on there, and we are done with this one. So what do you think of this? I just think this napkin is so precious. I know sometimes the red truck has been a little bit overdone, but on this little piece, I love it. It looks so patriotic and festive, and it is going to look awesome up on my mantle. Okay, so here we are with our final wrap up. We have our little tin can that we dressed up all festive, put the little bit of fabric in there, and our 3 tubes with our fun little sprays of sparkles at the top. Super easy and fun to do. You could even dress up the bottoms a little better than I did and use these as a completely separate display piece and maybe put some flowers in the tin. And here is our little cutting board that we transformed from fall to the 4th of July. Let me know what you think of these projects. I'm going to have some more videos coming out real soon. Otherwise, thanks for hanging out with me. I'll see you next time.